Welcome to Downshift. My name is Matt and I have finally spent a week with Subaru's BRZ. We've reviewed the sister to this car, the Toyota GR86, back even when it was called the GT86. But now we've finally had a go in Subaru's BRZ, and this is the TS trim. So I'm going to walk you around the car, show you the 14 things that you need to know, and let's get into it. But before we get into the meat and potatoes, let's cover some of the funky features going on with this BRZ. Like for one, you've got an STI logo on your start-stop button, and once you start it up, STI there, and STI there. And in another classic BRZ 86 staple, you go to Settings, General, scroll, and you've got a birthday list to keep track of your friends' birthdays. Now I'm over 30, so it's hard to keep friends, so this is nice. It gives me an excuse to text my friends and maybe pretend to make plans with them. But you also have an anniversary list. Like let's say you bought a small sports car and didn't tell your partner, well at least you can keep track of your anniversary in here so you don't get in trouble for that. The BRZ and the 86, saving marriages, one car at a time. And historically, as you'd expect, you've got a track mode button down here with traction control off, and then you press this, and then your cluster adjusts. Now it's interesting because 0 to 4,000 RPM is right there, but then 4,000 to 8,000 RPM is not the same distance. So the second half of the rev range, that comes at you fast. You've also got the world's most annoying turn signals. Honestly, I thought we got past this in mid-2000s with BMW. And if you look closely in your cluster here, you can see that that top MPG is blank because that's your live readout of fuel economy. Now, most cars will top out at like 99.9 or something like that, maybe 199.9 in some of the Toyotas. But here in the BRZ, the max fuel economy the computer will compute is 127 miles per gallon, which is just interesting to say the least. And one of the big things about this TS trim of the BRZ is the blue interior. You've got blue under your perforations in your suede seats, blue detailing through your seats, blue stitching. You've got blue on your, on your door card here, blue in the steering wheel, blue for your e-brake or your handbrake, and blue for your shift boot. But you know where it's not blue? The stitching for your carpets. And it's the same in the back too. So maybe it's an interesting omission, or maybe, hey, you like a little contrast. But with all those little odds and ends covered, let's get back to the meat and potatoes. Now, what is the BRZ and what's its competitors? Well, the BRZ, what I've found, is kind of like a more dailyable GR86. We've tested the GR86 every single year since back when it was called the GT86, but we've never had a go in the BRZ. So this has been kind of an eye-opening experience. It does feel a little bit more subtle and a little bit more dailyable. But here you can see on the front grille, it does say TS. Now, what is the TS thing? Well, it's about a $2,600 upcharge from the Limited, and it gets you special wheels with gold Brembo brakes, you get Hitachi tuned dampers, you get a much bluer interior garnish. It just kind of feels a little bit more special, but crucially for enthusiasts, you can only get the TS in a 3-pedal manual. But this is a sports car after all, so under the hood we have the 2.4 liter naturally aspirated boxer 4-cylinder. This is kind of the WRX engine minus the turbo, and here it makes 228 horsepower and 184 pound-feet of torque. It'll do 0 to 60 with just rear-wheel drive here and a torsen LSD in 6 seconds. This thing says, according to the EPA, it's 22 mpg worth of efficiency, but we did our Lakeshore Loop fuel economy test and beat that by 10 mpg. We came back with 32.1 mpg. Now, one of the things that I know a lot of people will talk about on the internet is when this new generation, it's not new anymore, but when this came out, they were like, why is there no turbo? Well, the turbo would add weight, it would add complexity, and importantly, it would add cost. And with the curb weight under 2,900 pounds here on the BRZ, I think it actually does okay with its naturally aspirated flat 4. Now, I mentioned a minute ago, you can only get the 6-speed manual transmission for your TS trim. There is an automatic, but that's not really one that you want. We've driven it in the 86 and it was kind of meh. There is no rev match feature for this though, so this and the Miata I think are the only ones that are bringing manuals that don't have a rev match feature. To be honest, it's kind of okay. This positions itself as like a pure sports car, and that's kind of in keeping with the theme. But interestingly, when you talk about the clutch pedal travel, all the spring feels like it's at the top of the clutch. Now, I kind of like it at the bottom, but just something to be aware of. And then again, when it comes to weight and dynamics, the curb weight is 2,850 pounds, so it's pretty light. You've got a torsen LSD sending all that 228 thumping horsepower to the rear wheels, and you've got the Hitachi dampers, which is special for this TS trim, and those cool gold Brembo brakes, they also make a big difference behind the wheel. And when it comes to styling, I kind of like the look of this thing. It's like a friendlier 86. It's blue as hell, which looks fantastic in this bright bright midday sunlight. And you've got the smiley grille with the TS badging. You've got familiar headlights, and they even pivot with the steering, which is a pretty advanced feature for something like this. You've got an embellished kind of front splitter and some functional air ducts in your front bumper. I don't really remember that from the 86, although it probably had it. But around the side we have 18-inch kind of gunmetal finished wheels, but you've got these beautiful gold Brembo brake calipers peeking out from underneath. I wish the Brembo script wasn't red, but ultimately it does look pretty cool. Now normally you would have it wrapped in PS4 Michelin performance rubber, but it's middle of March here in Wisconsin. It's actually a surprisingly nice day today. But due to the fact that it is Wisconsin in March, we've got the Pirelli Cinturato winter tires. They're 215 widths for either the summers or the winters. You do have the front gill, as you might expect, but as you back out, the profile of this thing is hot. I mean, it's a sports car. It doesn't have quite as flamboyant a rear wing as the 86 with its premium package, but it looks good. You got a subtle hip flare here that catches the sunlight on this blue paint really, really well. And the rear end, it's a classic and clean design. You've got dual exhaust and some LED taillights, and it's all good. I think it looks cool. What do you like the look of, this or the 86 or maybe even the Miata, I guess? But on a more practical note, we'll talk about the trunk. It's this small button right here that releases the trunk. And this is kind of the big selling point versus the Miata. You've got a 6.3 cubic foot trunk here. You don't have a spare tire, but you could fit something aftermarket if you wanted to. But again, this is a much bigger trunk than you would get in the Miata, and it doesn't stop there. You can fold these rear seats down into the cabin and have a truly large cargo area. Maybe you want to put some race tires in here, or just a bunch of stuff to go for a weekend at the cabin. So this, a lot more practical and dailyable than a Miata. And our more astute viewers will notice what I just mentioned, and it's the fact that this is also more practical than a Miata because you have rear seats. You have 4 seat belts, and you have child anchors, and you have some of the same kind of blue stitching and perforated suede back here, so it's actually fairly nice. Now, obviously adults aren't going to fit back here, but if you need to put a smaller person in the back, in a pinch, you could do it. And when it comes to the front seats, they're pretty nice. The bucketing is really pretty good. It's comfy while still being appropriate for what the car is. I've got some nice bolstering here. It keeps me in place really well. But again, the blue stitching, the blue sub perforations, the blue accenting and piping, and the blue accenting here on the steering wheel. Now the seat adjustments, they're manual as you might expect, but you do have 2 level heated seats here. So that's a pretty luxe feature, I would say, for a bare bones sports car. And the seats themselves, they're comfortable. The seating position makes sense for something like this. It totally works for me. But when we talk about the interior as a whole, now obviously for the low to mid $30,000, you're not expecting a huge amount in terms of luxuries or ritziness or things like that, but overall you got pretty much everything that you could need. Now obviously the interior is entirely made of the color black, but now featuring its friend blue. But we also have our manual transmission. We've got some hard buttons for things like our dual zone climate control and automatic climate control, heated seats, and we do have cup holders. I don't recommend putting a cup in this front cup holder because you will hit it with your elbow when you go to shift, but the rear one, that's a-okay. But one of the things you might notice is the Alcantara or suede, and it continues here on the door. We've got blue stitching on the door. We even have Alcantara up here above our gauge cluster. It's a fully digital gauge cluster and a decent sized screen, so overall it feels pretty appropriate for what it is. Not really going to complain about an interior like this around the $30,000 mark. And when it does come to technology, again, kind of like the interior, you got everything that you need and nothing you don't. You don't have a head-up display, but you didn't have a head-up display in the $100,000 Lotus Emira that we tested in LA in December. But you do have a fully digital instrument cluster, and when you hold the track button, it goes to the graduating thing, but you still have the STI logo up there. But it's nice. It totally works for everything that you need. Your center screen here does look a little bit like an aftermarket Kenwood system from like Too Fast, Too Furious. But again, you've got wired Apple CarPlay. You've got a reverse camera that is okay. And you've got a list to keep track of your friends' birthdays and your anniversary with your partner. So it's, you know, it's enriching your life in a way. This is not something that you're going to interact with a huge amount, and you have CarPlay, and that's really all that you need. So from a tech perspective, it's all right. But now, all BRZs come with Subaru's EyeSight and Adaptive Cruise. It's not going to have a lane keep assist, but you have Adaptive Cruise here in a manual equipped car, which is more than I can say as standard for a BMW M2. So that's a win. And the last thing that we'll talk about, of course, is the price. Now, as tested here in our TS trim, we're topped out at $36,499 $465, which is not a huge amount of money, but it's also not the smallest amount of money. Now, the Toyota GR86, the basically clone sister to this car, is going to be about $1,000 less than this across the range. At base, it's $1,000 less, and here in the TS, the Hakone is $1,000 less. But I actually kind of like this for more daily application. We'll talk about it more behind the wheel, but I do think it's a little bit more subtle and a little bit easier to live with than the 86. Maybe it's just the winter tires, but let's explore that a little bit more behind the wheel. Hey guys, real quick, Matt here. Just wanted to say I hope you've been enjoying the video. If you have, would really appreciate you hitting that subscribe button. I know it doesn't seem like a big deal, but it does go a long way in helping us get access to cars sooner and get access to manufacturer engineers so we can get more information on the cars and get you more information so you can make better decisions. So would really appreciate you hitting that subscribe, like, comment, the whole YouTube thing. But with that, let's get back to the video. BRZ. Brakes into third, tip in, decent hold, great chassis balance. It's a joy machine. It's just fun. That's kind of the point of this car. I mean, we could go in depth in all the technical stuff, what they've done with the suspension and the camber, the toe and everything like that, but at the end of the day, it is just a fun car. Now, this isn't going to surprise anyone. This isn't a brand new car. They haven't totally revised it for 2025, but the TS trim here with the Hitachi dampers and the Brembo brakes and some of the blue accenting in here does feel a little bit special. Now, I will say, I think some of the TS-ness is maybe being taken away from the fact that it's on winter tires, so that's a little bit of a bummer. I would like to have this back in like the summer to put it around our track at Road America and just see like how it stacks up against something like an Elantra N or something like that. Now, I'm not gonna lie to you, it doesn't feel like super powerful by any means. Obviously, it wouldn't. It's 228 horsepower and under 200 pound-feet of torque. But you get it right here, beautiful corner entry, rotates gracefully. It's a good car, man. It's just fun. It is fun. I think the thing that we always talk about in like our GR86 videos is how this platform, this car, is probably the best way to learn high performance driving technique. Like if you're just learning how to drive or you just want to start to learn how to drive on track, this is a great car for that because the chassis is so neutral and you're not going a million miles an hour. So if you have it off, you probably won't die. Now obviously, things in the internet will, suggest that maybe oil starvation is a bit of an issue or engines will blow up, and I'm not close enough to really comment on that. My job is to review the car as it is during my week of testing, and what it has been during this week of testing is a beautiful, balanced sports car that's just fun to drive. A lot of times what I do with, YouTubing and things like that, like I'm planning, I'm in meetings, like scheduling, I'm doing all these logistical things, editing, so I don't find myself often just like going out for a drive as much as I would, with these test cars. I go out and I get my impressions and then I drive around and like get smaller nuanced impressions and details during my week with the car. But with this, I've been looking for excuses to go out for a drive. I've been looking for excuses to come out here on this road and drive this car in ways that I'm not usually doing with other test cars. And I think that should say a lot. It is a fun, beautifully balanced sports car, and I hate that I keep saying that, but it's just true, and it's just a good time. So, is the TS thing worth it? Should you get the TS trim of this BRZ? Good if you want. I think if you want to have something that's pretty much ready to go on a racetrack the second it comes off the lot, this isn't a bad way to go. With a warranty, not such a bad idea. So Thank you to Subaru for letting me have a go in your BRZ. Finally had a go in a BRZ. We've had a go in a GR86 every year since back before it was called the GR86. But we've never actually had a go in the BRZ. And now, here we are. It's a beautiful car. Hard left-hander. Beautiful composure. Good car. Thanks for watching.